It's just kind of like, whatever, just go. Just kind of try to find all the little things to use to demonstrate and show stuff. It's going to take me another 20 minutes to track it all down, or just turn the camera on and go. So I turned the camera on and went. Okay, so I did get one of my boxes of supplies the other day. I guess sort of like yesterday. And this is for needle felting. So this is for one of the February projects that I'm working on. And I'll show you what the kit has. I do feel like sometimes the ideas I have for projects are just silly, but I get enthusiastic about them. Anyway, so the creations that I will be working on will be needle felting. And so I ordered this needle felting beginner's kit, I guess. Or maybe not a beginner's kit, I don't know. And it's basically packs of wool for 3 different projects. So each of these is a little packet of wool. This is wool roving, and it's 3 different ones you can do. This is the pad that you use the needle felting tool on, so that you don't poke into other surfaces. And these are all the little pieces. So these are pins, needles, finger protectors, tool holders, the whole 9 yards. Everything you should theoretically need to be able to do these projects. I can't guarantee or speak for the quality of the end product, because I've never done it before with these. And I've only ever done wet felting, which is soap and water and wool. So I've never done needle felting before. I'm kind of curious about it, see what I can do. But immediately upon getting this equipment and kit to do this stuff, my brain started to come up with other ideas I could do with it. Because it comes with instructions. Like, I shouldn't call them instructions. This is like a table of contents for the steps involved, but not a clear instructional. And I guess they come with videos. So it comes with these little things that show you what you're doing and what it's supposed to look like at the end. And then it has this thing at the bottom that's a YouTube channel for the actual video processes for making them. I get the distinct feeling that this is not an English as first language service. So that's another one that you can make with a kit. And part of that comes from this one in particular, the ghost with a hat, is it says somewhere around the way. Okay, so it says, take a thin lather of black wool and rub it into a small ball and poke the goblin's eye. What goblin? What goblin are we poking the eyes out of? But for some reason they refer to the ghost as a goblin. I just thought that was kind of amusing. And then there's a cat wearing a pumpkin costume, I guess. And these are the look on the projects are pretty simple, straightforward looks. They're not like a super adorable, cutesy things. They have some kits out there that have some amazingly adorable finished products. I don't know if I'm up to the skill level to do them, but I'm kind of curious to give them a try at some point. And I think it might be kind of fun just to test out the products, to say, like, okay, this is what it says you can make. How much of that is down to the skill of the creator that did the demo piece, and how much of that is actually what you're going to end up creating? So there's a little bit of that going on, and like I immediately started thinking of like other things I could do with needle felting in this style. And I got thinking of like, I'm not sure, but if memory serves me, like with wet felting, which is soap and water, um, you can only really do it with animal hair. Oh, speaking of which, don't let me forget to talk about the dog hair. Um, the animal hairs have the tendency to have those fibers that um, unfold when put in hot water and then recatch in cold water. And if you do it right, you can get them open and then rub them together so that they mesh and then they lock together so that they won't come apart. You get a dense, firm uh, felt. But one of the things that's interesting is I do know from some of my learning about plastics and plastic materials is um, that craft felt you get from like the craft store isn't wool. It's not animal hair. It's made out of a synthetic fiber. So they've made a felt from like an acrylic or some other synthetic fiber. So it can be done. Now, whether or not they use any like binders or glues, that's a possibility. But I seem to recall years ago, one of the things they do is they take the old water bottles, like the disposable plastic drinking bottles, they spin them into um, fiber, like a fleece or a, a synthetic fiber, and they comb it like wool into these pillowy piles of it, and then they run it through a machine that has hundreds of these needles that go through it and tangle the fibers into each other in such a way that it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter and forms those sheets of felt. And needle felting is one of those things that like that's what that is. That's needle felting. So I have heard that you can potentially needle felt cotton, so cotton balls from the dollar store or cotton pads, um, or acrylic yarns or things like that. Now they don't necessarily felt up quite as well as like a wool fiber might. But the other thing about felting wool is if you wet felt wool, you don't really get the chance to do it again. Like once it's fully set up and fully felted, you can't adjust the felting again. So if you took a bunch of that roving and you made flat sheets of it and wet felted it together, and then you cut a shape out of it, you can't wet felt the edges of those cuts to make a ball or something like that. It just doesn't work theoretically. I don't know anybody who's ever tried it and succeeded, and I've been told by some people who do this for a craft that it's not supposed to be possible. Now, whether or not somebody could figure out how to make it work, if you included um, a detergent of a certain kind that does a certain thing, whether or not you could re-wet felt pieces together again, I don't know. But needle felting doesn't have any such restriction. So there's a part of me that looks at not only with that, like where I work, we have a lot of really cheap acrylic yarn. You can get lots of cheap acrylic yarn. Getting wool yarn is much more expensive. And so the idea of being able to go to a thrift store and buy a cheap sweater, like a $4 sweater, and take whole sections of that yarn and needle felt it together into something, that's something I can do. I can go to a store like where I work and get bunches of acrylic yarn for like a buck or two and uh, felt that together with a needle. Um, but even more than that, I can use some uh, like loom knitting, like I forget the name of some of them, but there are these rings with these pegs on them that you can wind your yarn around, and then you do the second row and you pull the first set of loops over it. You can make the turtleneck top, or you can make a hat, or you can make scarves and blankets. And once you've done that with a yarn, if you do the right kind of weave, it's a fairly dense, thick pile on that yarn. There's a part of me that wonders, if I do hats or things like that, could I felt them together in the shape that I want to with needle felting? And even more so, like, could I do a pair of like slippers or shoes even, where I knit like a small top, like a hat, and another one for the heel, and then a tube where I split at a certain point, and then just put the edges of those together, and then needle felt the whole thing into a solid felted surface. Could I do that with acrylic yarns? If I can, that would be awesome. That would be a lot of fun to do a whole set of like boots or weird costume pieces that way. And so I'm kind of curious about that. But I was also thinking along the lines of, can I buy these sheets of craft felt, cut shapes out of them like you're doing paper models? If you've ever seen some of the paper crafting that's out there, you can make these models by taking I'm sure we did it when we were younger. I had a book for a castle that you could cut out or punch out the pieces, fold along certain lines, and then there were these little white tabs that you would fold over that would glue to the white tabs on the next piece that glues to it. And there's some tabs through slots kind of thing. And if you built something out of craft felt where you cut them out in those shapes of tabs and slots and those types of things, and you put them all together through those tabs and slots, and then you needle felted the seams, could you make something that looks like it's been felted into that finished shape, but you could put things inside of it? So there's a part of me that really wants to think about, like, what kind of interesting things could I legitimately do? Could I do, like, again, costuming pieces, or backpacks or purses or things like that I sell at craft fairs? Could I do, there's just like, I could do stuffed animals. I could possibly do some puppets. This could be a way of making puppets for making movies and skits and stuff with. And I'm like, all of that from just possibly felting together some craft felt that you get from the store, which you can't wet felt with soap and water. Like, if you were to buy a real wool sweater and you put it in hot soapy water and then scrubbed at it, it would all bind together into a flat sheet of meshed fibers. But if it doesn't go the way you hope it goes, you don't have the chance to fix it. Like, you get one shot at getting it right. Whereas needle felting, not only can it be a synthetic fiber, but I can alter it. Like, admittedly, the biggest problem with this idea is that if I'm doing anything on the scale of costuming or clothing, it's not simple. Like, it's not like a 5 minutes of and it's done. No, you're going to be doing this for hours. I guess there are multi needle tools. You could get some tools that are like it's almost like one of those rubber stampers where you push down on it and the stamp pops out, stamps, and then pulls back in. I think there are a few of those where you can go and get swatches of fibers, like, not huge. I'd be curious to see what the biggest one available for use are. Like, I wonder if Amazon has one the size of like a like a paperback book. If you had a pad like this that was just all felting needles, the speed at which you could go through felting wool to make costumes, like I'm so enthusiastic about the costumes because I do think like for movies and other things, but even just making your own designs in clothing where you don't want to take panels and stitch them together. What you want is a full continuous piece of material. And the idea that you could potentially do it with cotton, like cotton felt, that would be some of the warmest clothing you could ever do because it's still going to have the like a bunched up fiber, like a quilted fiber to it. So it's not going to be like a flannel even or like a thin cotton material. It's gonna be like a quilted material. But if you had something the size of a paperback book, you could make blankets. And the thing about it that's cool is you can make blankets because like in the directions for like the goblin, the ghost, and the needle felting kit, the facial features like the eyes and the blush on the cheeks, you take little wisps of fiber and you needle felt them into location. So if you took basically bunches of cheap cotton balls, you stretch them out, you laid them together, and you needle felted them together in one big sheet for a blanket, like a cotton blanket. And then you could take little individual cotton balls, put them in cotton dyes, set up the dye, pull off wisps of it, and do a pattern with detail that it borders on embroidery, but it makes it look like it's been dyed into the fabric the way it is. And so I was like, there's a part of me like, what can I do with that? Could I make paintings? Could I make blankets? Could I make a vest or hats? Like you can make a lot of things, I imagine, with some very interesting design elements to them because they become seamless. They don't have panels or pleats or edges. Like you could full on take a pattern that would otherwise require there to be pleats in the fabric to make it bunch in the right way. There don't have to be pleats. You can full on make something the shape of a light bulb out of one continuous sheet of fabric. And it's because you've needle felted them together. So there's a part of me is like, ooh, I could do a lot of interesting things with that. But I was thinking of like the puppets for doing like some of the ideas I talked about in the past with the Star Wars rewrites that I was thinking of doing, which I've had brainstorms on some of that too. And then I got thinking like, not only could you do it for puppets, you could also do it for like dolls and miniatures. Like I know enough people who are into like miniature wargaming where they have these pewter or small plastic models that they prime and paint in intricate patterns. And there's a part of me is like, how small can I needle felt? Like, can I make a miniature scale felted figurine? Can I make them to look like certain characters from movies and games? And I'm like, I wonder, like, could you make statues, busts, action figures, and mini wargaming characters out of felt? And if you were to do that, like stylistically, there's a part of me that wants to make them look adorable. Like, if I wanted to play a Star Wars tabletop role-playing game or a miniatures war game, I want to make a Chewbacca. I want to make a Chewbacca that tall that's made out of felt. I want to see the fibers that make Chewbacca up. If you did an Addams Family knockoff for a tabletop game, could you do a felted? Well, you could clearly do a Cousin It, but could you do the rest of the cast that way? And there's Trying to think of one of the games I've got over here that I think I was playing at doing a review of at one point, and I don't know if I ever recorded it. But here, see if I can pull it out. Get this out of the way. Please don't fall over. Please don't fall over. You're going to fall over, aren't you? You're going to be a dork. All right. So this thing here with the Funko Pops, I think that's what they are, right? Funko Games, yeah. So these constructions, imagine making something similar to that out of felt for any character you've ever seen in a movie or a game. Maybe even smaller versions of that, keychain versions of something like that. And this is a game. This isn't just the decorative pieces. So it has a board that you put the pieces on. And, you know, the pieces, you have fighting and chases and whatnot. Each of the characters comes with a card that gives you special actions in the gameplay. And so there's a part of me like, well, I won't have the cards for the characters, but like the cards are just a made-up feature anyway. Like there's no reason why I can't make custom superhero characters to play in a superhero Funko game style. That's, my niece could play her own character. Invent a superhero and play her own character in that. And so there's a part of me is like, oh, game pieces, making custom characters, pieces for displaying special scenes. Like if you're a D&D player, if your character dies and you want like a memento character piece, like to make something like that for that would just be kind of fun to see if you could, how easy it would be to put something like that together. So I had a lot of fun just imagining what that would look like. So you could do a stylistically similar to these. I think you'd probably get in trouble if you got too close to these. But there's also some sort of similar, I believe it's called kawaii, which is a Japanese term meant to mean cute. So you've probably seen things out there like food with smiley faces on it, like adorable looking cartoon food with smiley faces, donuts and French fries and milkshakes with smiley faces on them. And you can do that kind of thing. And you could probably do that kind of thing with just about anything. There's also chibi characters from Japanese animation, which are big head, little body. The body doesn't have all the detail of a body. Like the body looks almost like a starfish that you've stuck the character's head on, but you dress it up in a certain costume, and the head is in many ways very similar to the head of these characters. So like the opportunity to maybe do something like those for gaming or even just decoration, like could you do, I think there's something similar. I'm going to put this back up there, but I think there's something similar that they have these designs that are literally just the character's head with feet and hands sticking off the sides of them. And they make these little charms for your phone. How small can I needle felt? That's one of the big questions that's going to come up over the next few days is how small can I needle felt something? But, and here we go, put this back up here and probably knock everything over in the process. That's okay. But one of the other things that came to mind was like if I'm able to do or find a vest or a hat made out of a certain material, if I can needle felt to other felt, if I can find felted clothing or make my own felted clothing, I can then add pieces to it. So if I wanted to do like a sword, like a shirt with a sword through it, like a felted sword, I could do that because I could make it look like it's blending in and melding into it. If I wanted to get if I got a ski mask, could I felt a character's face onto the mask? So it's not just a plain ski mask. Now it's a mask you can wear as a hat and then unfold and show like a very like, who would I do? I could do something like the Terminator's face, or I could do Iron Man face, or something along those lines. Could I do a Darth Vader, maybe a Boba Fett? I don't know. It might be able to felt together a wearable felt helmet for those characters. But I'm thinking more along the lines of Captain America. Like, if you buy a base black ski mask, could I put Black Panther face on it? Not that I would wear that, because that would be inappropriate. But could I do a Vision from WandaVision or the Avengers? Like, superhero characters are one of the easiest, like, for masks and stuff like that. But could I make a pair of felted Viking helmet horns and find a cheap enough, or make a bowler hat, like the old bowl top, stylish. It's oftentimes considered common Victorian British headwear, with the rounded top instead of the flat top, which is a busman's helmet, a busman's hat, or a chauffeur's hat, or top hats. Those all had flat tops, whereas the bowler had the rounded top, or a derby also is a rounded top version. If I could get or make one of those hats and then put Viking horns on it, that would be fun as all get out. Like, and if I'm able to take an existing wool or felt material, like a lot of those hats are made out of felted hairs. If I can take an existing wool or felted hat structure and felt on additions like a lit light bulb made out of felt, or a dragon sleeping around the brim of a cowboy hat, or something like that. Like, I could do some very interesting art hats. Not that they would be super cost effective or time effective to be doing a lot of that kind of stuff, but just the opportunity makes me interested in seeing what more I could potentially do with felting, needle felting particularly. But I did want to get back to talking about the dog hair. So I did get some dog hair from my mom's visit when I visited with my mom. I can go into more detail about the visit with my mom, where I went up to visit her. We talked a lot about just thinking about like the mortality risks of the pandemic we're in, and trying to make sure we have things arranged so that things are taken care of if that happens. And I made dinner. I made my spiced and seasoned potatoes, onions, peppers, and sausage dish. And that was pretty good. I think I put a little more chipotle than I normally would in there, but it didn't seem to bother either of us terribly much. I gave her a bottle of my mead, and she was reasonably impressed with it. And I brought a jar of my homemade cranberry mandarin jam that I make. And it was a little thinner than it normally is. So I sort of regret that I didn't get it a little thicker than that. But she wanted to drizzle it over ice cream, so that works for me either way if she wants to do that. But At one point, I said, "Don't let me forget that I want to see if I can get some hair from your dog to see if I can make paintbrushes." She goes, "It's very fine." And she goes, "I guess we could brush the dog. It's like 10 o'clock at night and the dog is sleeping. It's one of those leave sleeping dogs to lie kind of thing." But she goes, "Oh wait, I've got a bag from when I was brushing her out in fall, and like I've got a bag of dog hair now." But the funny thing is, the hair that a Labrador Retriever sheds are not the coarser upper hairs that would probably make decent hairbrush bristles. This looks like fine wool fibers. I would be willing to bet you that I could take a couple pet brushes and cross comb it to get them running in the same direction, and then I could probably spin it into a yarn that I could probably wet felt. I could probably needle felt it too, but it's a very fine fiber. So I don't know how well it's going to make any bristles at all. So I'll give it a try and report the failures, even if it doesn't go well. But I may have to resort to using my own hair for making brushes out of, because honestly, that dog hair that I got, it's the undercoat. It's the stuff they shed, and that is super fine material. I wouldn't guarantee it soft enough that you'd ever want to wear it as a clothing against your skin. It might be a little too itchy for that. But I know that I've felt uh, sheep's wool that was much more coarse than the dog hair. I think the biggest difference with the dog hair is the length of the fiber is short, whereas wool can get relatively long. I might be able to make felt like marker type tips that I can use for painting, but I'm not sure they're ever going to be decent larger brushes. I might be able to make them make a good set of super fine detail brushes. I just thought that was such a weird thing. Like you expect, like a Labrador Retriever's hair is not soft and silky. It feels like a thin shag carpeting sometimes if it's the right kind of messy hair. Um, no, what it really feels more like is, I'm trying to think of an equivalent. It almost feels like dog hair when you're petting a dog has a tendency to feel a little bit more like, not quite the toothbrush bristles, a little finer than toothbrush bristles, but it's not what you'd expect a fine hair to come out of. But the stuff I got from my mom that she had combed out of that dog when it was shedding, that's not the same hair. That's a different set of hair. Now there might be some of the coarser hair fur bristles intermixed into that. Um, that's I won't probably spend a lot of time hunting those out, but if I can collect a small collection of those enough to make a single brush out of them, that would be cool if I could find enough in there to do that. Now I know for a fact that my sister's dog has much more wiry hair, and I have combed my fingers through that dog's longer hairs and come away with hanks of hair that are like the bristles on a painter's paintbrush. So I know it's down to different dogs have different hair. I just don't have access to that right now. So it is what it is. I will play with what I get. Um, I was going to say a few other things that I had in mind today, but I guess we're talking about hair, wool, and felting today because we're about 35 minutes in. I've got to get ready for going to bed because I got work again tomorrow. I did bring some of my jam and my mead wine into my boss. She was too distracted to really give any kind of sense of anything, except for when she was leaving. She was like, she almost forgot it and left it behind, and I reminded her about it. She goes, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to get home." And so hopefully I will hear back about her thoughts about it. I also acquired a couple things from work that are like some of the packaging that came for shipping things to us. Uh, the packaging was going to get thrown away. I don't know if any of that's going to be useful for setting up a workstation that's a little bit easier to use than the TV tray that I have this all set up on right now. I've got like 2 TV trays right next to each other, supporting this whole thing. I think there's probably a more resourceful and useful way to set this all up, but oh, that is something I will say. A couple of the things that I will probably do as reviews on this channel in the next month or so are going to be things that I got for changing up some of the things I can do. So I went on Amazon and got the cheapest green screen material, and it's really just the material and 2 like spring clamps, like super cheap spring clamps. But I should be able to clamp it to the curtain rod, and I believe it's an 8x4 sheet of green screen material. So theoretically, it's the cheapest model of green screen you can get on Amazon, and I want to see how well it works. Now, I will probably set it up here and try it and see what I can do with it. And part of that's going to be unboxing it, checking it out, seeing what kind of creasing has happened while it's been packaged and shipped. But one of the other things I found was the cheapest model of they call it a selfie station, but it is essentially a clamp that you can clip to your work surface that has 2 adjustable sort of flexible necks. One holds a phone in a phone clamp, and the other holds a small ring light. Now, I'm curious to see if I can use the phone clamp to maybe hold the webcam as well as my new phone, and in what positions I can set it up to hold the phone, whether or not it only uses the selfie mode, because I have 2 cameras on that phone, the selfie camera and then the back camera. And the back camera, I believe, is the one that allows me to do panoramics and what is it, time skip? No, time lapse photography. And so being able to clamp that to a surface may make it possible for me to do the top-down approach. I don't know. It's the cheapest model of that kind of thing that was available on Amazon for me to test. And there's a part of me that thinks like there's no way that those flexible neck extenders sticking off of it can hold the weight of a full-blown phone. Because this is, I mean, I don't know what other people's phones are, but it's not ultra light. This is much lighter than this is. So I feel like the weight of this at the end of a long flexible neck, I feel like it's just going to cause drooping and gradually sliding. But I'll check it out. I'll see whether or not it works. I mean, if it works well enough, there are a couple other things I want to play with. I found at work a very cheap selfie stick, and whether or not there are ways to mount that selfie stick that lets me do an overhead shot arrangement, or one of the other things I've thought about is the selfie stick has a feature that you have a button on the side of the handle, and it sends something through a line to something that plugs into the headphone jack of my phone that lets it click a frame. Now, if I can figure out what that feature is, can I do the same thing and set up basically a cord with a click button on the end of it that I can use for doing things like stop motion animation, where I can take a picture every time I adjust or change something on a flat surface that the phone's looking down on. If that's the case, I may open up a whole world of possibilities from some very cheap supplies, and I'd like to do some reviews of those. I'm also working on my February projects. I don't have anything to show off right now because it's not in range, and I didn't get it before I turned the camera on, so I'm not going to chase it down right now. But I've also been brainstorming some more for some of my writing and other projects. I'm sort of getting over my hate for my animation. I almost deleted it. I will probably do some fiddling with it and then post it later. Not later today. And I got enough on my plate for the next day and a half. I will get back to it and show it off at some point in the future, whatever comes of it. But for now, we are approaching 45 minutes. Well, that's the thing is with the, I don't know if the selfie stick is around, but there was, I think it was the Stevenson guy or whatever it is that I might have mentioned once before, Alan Stevenson or something like that. He's a New Zealander who lives in, I think it's Brazil. And he does a lot of videos where he does like using scrap materials. He will assemble a scroll saw or a rig for weaving wigs for puppets. And he did some puppetry things. He did a how to make a rudimentary green screen, stretch it taut. He also did some of the gelatin-based prosthetic makeup tutorials that I saw a while back. One of the things he did was he built a boom rig, similar to the one that I showed in my Roving Jack channel on the guy who built one in Mobile, Alabama. Yeah, he made a boom arm setup, a rig using Arduinos and stuff to shoot high angles and low angles and moving between them and spinning and turning on certain axes. He's got that one's all like Arduinos and all that crap. Stevenson guy on his channel, he did something where he built a very simple rig out of PVC pipe that can fold up and you can travel in a bag with it. And it is something that has basically, it has a central piece that you run string from that to the end of the line so that as you move your boom up and down, that central piece stays at an upright position. And so as you move it down, it shortens the length of the cord, and so that the camera tilts up. So you get this ability of this thing that if you're coming in and you're doing a panning down shot and you're aiming the camera, say you're aiming the camera down at me from up high, and as you start to slide the camera down, it keeps focused on the point it's shot at. So when you can get down on the ground and it's looking up at my face, like, it doesn't require any Arduinos, any wiring, or any batteries. It was just a PVC pipe rig that could do tracking shots of a stationary person. And so you could do that sweeping in thing. Like if you've ever seen the news where the camera comes sort of sliding into frame and it's just focused on the person it's coming in on, and the rest of the set moves around them. You can do those kinds of shots with a camera, or like a phone or a camera, and a simple rig built out of PVC or wooden dowels. And the thing is, those selfie sticks, if I could make a simple little thing to hold it to a mini tripod, I could make an arm that does that same thing. I can essentially set the handle of that selfie stick at an end weight that end of it so that it counterbalances the rest of the extended selfie stick, set the camera on the end of the selfie stick, and just use that as a mini boom. And I was like, I could do some very interesting projects with that. But I mean, I don't need to have a 3D printed anything. Like a selfie stick has a thing that clamps onto it relatively easily. And honestly, if you needed to build your own, I I kid you not, you could build a holder for your phone with rubber bands and popsicle sticks that would hold it just as well as most of these other commercial designed holders. So, like the selfie station has I believe it's essentially that. It's like uh, two pieces that mesh like this, and they each have a ledge on them, and so that they can slide to close in and on it. And there's like a spring or something on the inside, or a rubber band or something that gives it that tension. So you pull it open, you put your phone in, and it'll clamp down on it. Like you can do that easily with popsicle sticks from like you can get dozens of popsicle sticks from the dollar store and do that exact same thing. The thing about what it stands on is it's one of those like flexible snake style holders. I don't know how sturdy that is in comparison to, say, a rigid arm structure. Um, but I mean, it's like I said, I could probably build a rigid arm structure similar to those lamps that you can get for your table that you can adjust the positioning. Like those, you can make those out of dowel and popsicle sticks and that kind of stuff too. So, like it wouldn't be super hard to build a rig, um, but like when you can pay, I think it was like $12 to $15 and get a ring light with 3 adjustable color tones that you can power from a USB device. So it's portable. It has you could probably use one of those battery backup devices for your cell phone or electronic device. Use that as your power supply for it, and hook up your phone into the phone section for it. And you can have a positionable shooting surface, a setup. Just clamp it to any tabletop or desk or chair of an arm of a chair. You could probably do that. I hadn't thought about that. That might be an option. That would be a weird way to do it, though. It'd be very close to your face. All sorts of kinds of things to explore. But for now, I'm calling it a night. I will catch you. God, what day is today? Today's Thursday, right? Yeah. I will catch you on Sunday, I guess. Until then, thank you for joining me again. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're safe. I hope you're recovered from what you went through recently. And I will talk to you later. Take care and have a super night. I don't know why I went with super tonight, but I went with it. I'll just flow with it. It hasn't been super cold here tonight. But we're in the midst of getting multiple rounds of snow. I think we talked about that on Sunday. You're like, aren't you guys supposed to be getting snow? We got a moderately decent sized snowstorm, and then we had a day without snow, and then the next day we got a small snow shower, and then like I think it was last night we got another snowstorm. And so I think we're gonna get another one this week, and we need it. We need the water. We do not have a lot of like everybody's talking about how like we have had so little rain and almost no snow up until now. So it's going to be very dry if we don't get more precipitation in volume. I kind of would prefer that we got it as spring rains, because I'm pretty sure snow piled up when it melts is just going to be flooding, and it's not going to soak in the way it needs to soak in. But that's absolutely nothing to do with anything I do on my channel. I am not an expert, and I know nothing about most of that. So I'm going to call it good night before I ramble on some weird other topic that I have no experience or knowledge about.